What's up everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today we got to see the skill tree in Gotham Knights, and it was actually a very detailed one because we got to see every single skill for Red Hood, and this in my opinion is probably one of the better parts of the reveal that IGN has been doing in collaboration with Warner Brothers Games Montreal. In fact, if you go on the video, one of the biggest comments that I got to see, somebody basically said this is a reveal that's not asking you to buy a game, but actually showing you exactly what it is you're paying for. And I think that's fair because I've seen also from other people who've said this skill tree is not impressive to me. This does not make me feel like I'm going to be paying for this game. And to me, I think that is actually the best part of Gotham Knights. You have enough information, if not more than enough information, for you to make your choice about this game. But in today's video, we're going to look at some of the highlights of the skill tree. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to take a comparative analysis methodology anyways to see how this skill tree maybe mirrors some other critically acclaimed video games out there and potentially some of the old Arkham games. I think the Arkham games are called into question more because Warner Brothers Games Montreal did work on Batman Arkham Origins. So what you're going to see is that Arkham Origins really does have a lot of that same methodology as well. And there are probably a plethora of other video games that also follow this particular framework, but it is something that is quite interesting to see. Now, the skill tree is a very simple skill tree in the way that it works. You use your XP points that you gain from taking out enemies, completing activities, or whatever it is to level up, and every time you level up you gain ability points, which you then use to unlock the abilities on the skill tree. The abilities on the skill tree are a mixture of new abilities in the sense of being able to do something that you're not necessarily able to do until you unlock it, and also new stat changing abilities that in some cases would add to an already existing ability. So this is classic RPG methodology. In fact, if you look at say the Arkham games and you look at Batman's skill tree in those games, you're going to notice that it actually takes this same format. The Batman games would have a special ability that you unlock with XP, and then in some cases some of the abilities start to increase as you add more XP points to the ability tree. For instance, if you're doing a glide attack, eventually in Arkham Knight you're able to add to that glide attack where you can pretty much hit bad guys with a batarang throw while you're gliding towards attacking them. So these kinds of additive methodologies are very good in an RPG game because as the player you can get used to that new ability, and then eventually if you want to add variation to your playstyle, you're able to use these incremental capabilities that you're getting over time, and it gives you a little bit of variation and doesn't leave you bored with just one single ability that doesn't necessarily have an upgradable route. Another key highlight of this ability tree is each knight is endowed with about 21 skills and 8 skills on a knighthood tree. And also there's some other abilities that are kind of auxiliary in a sense, which really do change the way the game plays. So when you kind of take into account how all these are put together, you're looking somewhere around close to 40 abilities per knight. Now, these abilities are going to be categorized under different methodologies where you, as the player, can probably take whichever route you want to be able to build your character, and it allows for a little bit of flexibility. And then this really brings to question how you're going to go ahead and level up your 4 knights. Now, Patrick Redding did explain that you can actually pull from any leftover XP that you have to start to maybe invest in another character and not necessarily needing to play the entire story route for you to be able to gain some abilities that are actually tied into the story for say a different knight when you get to the point where you want to level them up. How this is going to work exactly, I can't necessarily wrap my mind around it. I would love to see it in action and actually get my hands on it before I can actually give a very detailed explanation as to exactly how it's actually going to go. But this use of excess XP that's available in order for you to be able to kind of get ahead when you pick up another knight, to me is actually a lot of fun. And I think it's something that I embrace very well because having played other games that have these RPG elements, most of them would make for you to actually grind all of these ability trees separately after completing the story progression and other side mission progressions. If you look at my account in Tom Clancy's The Division and Division 2, there are systems like that that are actually hard fast. You really have to redo everything again if you were to create another character, or if you say maybe wanted to go ahead and use an ability tree, you would have to do those ability trees in the new character It wasn't until later on that Ubisoft Massive went ahead to make it all streamlined, where if you'd already done all of your ability trees on one character, they allowed for you to carry the progress to a whole separate character. I think we're probably going to be seeing something along the lines in Gotham Knights, where somewhere there's a middle ground where if you're investing in one character and that's the character you enjoy playing, and you've transcended and basically maxed out all of your skills, you can then use that pool of XP to basically quickly speed up the investment in another character. To me, I feel like this provides a lot of replayable value that doesn't make the game hard fast into a grind, and you can pretty much just casually play your second night or third night in the way that you actually want and kind of take your time with the game without any emergency to basically say, well, you know, I really got to get this particular skill right now and I feel like I have to start from zero all the way to the top. Now, something that was actually apparent to me as they were showcasing the skill tree was something that not many of us have really seen. It appears to me that Red Hood might have some combo capabilities that we haven't seen in any gameplay, because while they were showcasing his ability tree, he seemed to have a barrage where he actually did multiple basic attacks in a string. Now, we haven't seen this in any of his gameplay, because every time whoever is playing the game is actually playing, they're dodging after every individual strike that he deals. So this has been really confusing for a lot of us here in the audience, and I'm glad that I held back judgment in my last video, because it appears that there is much more for us to see as you actually start getting stronger. So I don't know if the showcase on IGN actually had Red Hood to max level yet, or maybe the playstyle of whoever was controlling the character was just using a lot of the heavy barrage moves. But it appears to me that Red Hood might be a much more interesting character in his build when we get the game. But so far so good. I think this skill tree is actually very satisfactory to me when you actually consider the fact that there are 4 different knights and each and every one of them is going to have the skill tree for you to be able to level up that has their distinct moves that complement their style. It really does bring the game into an entirely new light. Now, if you also want to consider this though, you look at the Arkham games, you're going to see that this methodology has actually been in process from Arkham City all the way through Arkham Knight. In fact, in Arkham City, Catwoman had a very small skill tree that you could actually upgrade some of her moves and some of her basic attacks. This is when Rocksteady was trying to flirt with the idea of what it would look like to have multiple characters in a video game that are distinct enough and you can actually get some power fantasy out of them. If you also look at Arkham Knight, and I'm sure many of you are probably saying, well, who was the second character in Arkham Knight? It is your friendly neighborhood Batmobile. And I know Batmobile maybe causes some nightmare reactions for some people, but the Batmobile is your second player character, because once you're in the Batmobile, your control scheme and the way you actually use the character is slightly different. So that is why that is a different player character that requires a slight modification to your player controller. But your Batmobile got upgrades as well that were in some cases incremental, like your armor to your Batmobile. You pretty much were leveling up from 25% extra armor to 75 to 50 to 75 and to 100, which is what you're going to also be seeing here in Gotham Knights, in a sense where the different characters are going to be gaining new abilities and then eventually having some kind of a numerical increase to be able to get them or their abilities much stronger. If you look at, say, the ability system as well and how it's tied into the story and the narrative, this has also brought some concern by some players who have said, well, if the abilities are kind of gated to the story, I don't see how any AAA game could make you do that. Well, that assessment is not taking consideration into the plethora of single player games that have actually put you in that position where you cannot do specific abilities until you progress through the narrative of the game, or at least progress through specific areas of the world of the video game. A big example is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. If you've played that game, you'll know that Cal Kestis gains a lot of his Jedi abilities from pretty much his memories that he had lost when he was in specific situations in the narrative. So if you do not reach that part of the progression and you're just visiting all of the different worlds that are available to you, he's not going to be able to get those Force abilities. Now, yes, using XP, you can level up some of your other skills in the skill tree, but some of those abilities that are outside of the skill tree are only acquired as you progress through the game. Even games like God of War and some of your specific skill abilities are locked behind you having reached the part of the story narrative to gain other abilities that can then help you unlock, say, chest, and some areas that would then give you extra abilities. So there's a weaving that's gone into this, and many video games try to hide it back and forth. But many of us know that until you get to Helheim to accomplish the first part of the Atreus storyline, you're not able to get that ability to be able to use those winds to unlock specific areas that would then give you extra skill abilities. So there is nothing wrong inherently as to how any game developer does their ability tree in most cases, but in this case I see a reason for them to actually emphasize that regardless of what anybody might think. And even in the Arkham games, you still had some of those as well. There were specific points of the game, say in Arkham Origins, where you had to first get to, or at least bosses that you had to fight before you acquired gadgets that were then unlocked in the ability tree for you to start making those gadgets stronger. One of them that's actually more iconic is Deathstroke's weapon, where it's able to attach an object to a different player and then use that object to strike them or attach the enemy to a ledge. The only way you can get that device is if you actually fight against Deathstroke. So this is something that's common in video games. It's not necessarily out of the question. I guess the biggest question is how you're going to be able to interact with all of the different 4 knights, and I guess it's your choice. Every time you put a knight into a situation during the playthrough, which you have the capability to actually switch knights as the game is going, maybe at night you can pick whichever knight you want to use to go solve a problem. I think this is where the interesting part's going to be, because that XP pool seems to be available for any of the knights that you actually fire up. This is one of the more flexible systems that I've actually seen in a video game that has multiple characters, but at the end of the day, it'll be nice to see how this works out before we can make a final judgment on it. So far so good, I'm sold on it, and I'm definitely looking forward to playing Gotham Knights at this point. Thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate your audience and the time that you've actually taken to watch the video. Let me know your thoughts about the skill tree in the comment section below. Peace out.